And I don't know about you all, but I've found that it getting sort of more and more anxiety as we got closer and closer to today. And somewhat motivated by that, but also motivated by just trying to find different, better ways to do what we're doing, since we're going to be doing this again next semester. I actually took a bunch of pieces of what I would have lectured about today and popped them out into asynchronous videos. The videos one is about the readings, where I introduce each of the readings and sort of say why that they're there. And then APIs in Everyday Life is just like a 2-minute video that just sort of is my spiel on why it makes sense to be kind of interested in APIs in a more general sense than just learning how to write applications that use them. And then the next two kind of continue the metaphorical take on APIs, explaining how they work, and finishing with Hydro as an API. In that one, we talk about the electrical system, the power grid as an API, and try to hammer home two really important things about it, which are the way in which APIs use abstraction and encapsulation. Using the Zotero API walks you through how I did build a little app on top of the Zotero API. Zotero is an online bibliographic platform. And then lastly, a tiny little piece on who should know about APIs and why. So they're all in here. And I've got the speaker notes is basically the transcript. So each of the next few slides walks through these. Interspersed in there is this one little short video on SOAP and REST APIs. Not the most important thing in the world, because almost everything you encounter these days is a REST RPI or API, but a useful few minutes. And then just a little quick, why do we do this? Number 5 is the most important thing here. So take note of this number 5 as we go by it. And then I just have this very short piece on why different folks would want to know about APIs. And then what we'll do, then you talk about the Zotero API. Then when we come back, we'll look at some examples, and then we'll introduce the problem of the week, which is going to be our lab, our tutorial, and our problem set all wrapped into one. Bottom line, why are we doing APIs? Why are we talking about them? It's really because of the power that it puts in everybody's hands. Anybody can build a device and plug it into an API. And more importantly, there's a modularity that comes with this, because functionality can move around. We can kind of plug things in different ways. We get to ignore details and only interact with an abstraction, and we'll see that especially in some cases of our examples here. And we reduce transaction cost. If you've studied economics, you know that transaction costs are a big part of the friction in the world. And transaction costs come out in the context of technology when two players need to sit down and talk to each other about how they're going to interface their activities together. And an API allows that to be specified ahead of time. The protocol gets followed, everything works. And then, as I said at the beginning, number 5 is probably the most important one. The incentive to build an API and to build a good API that's useful and makes it really easy for people to build applications, because that means that people who are not in your organization are going to be building tools that bring people to your, as I put it here, casino, right? So whatever it is that you're selling or that you want to get the word out about, the more that you can get other people to build the applications that bring people to your doorstep, the better off you are. So you have an incentive to do that. So the Zotero API is the thing that you see me using on the Quirkus pages and slides and that. Very easy to get a sense of how it works. But here's some other examples that are kind of interesting. Leaflet is a GIS API. So what Leaflet does is connect to a platform behind the scenes that will deliver what are called map tiles. The way that the world of GIS works at this point in time is this very interesting hierarchical approach to mapping. So we start out with one single map of the world, which is this big, and it's the whole world taken from quite a distance away. And then if you were to click on, say, the upper left-hand corner of that, your map zooms in. And what zooming in means is delivering to you some map tiles which will cover just one part of that, and they'll then fill this grid. So you now have, say, 4 map tiles that are zoomed in a bit. And then if you click on something in the upper left here, you're going to get 4 more tiles, and that's the way that a map zooms in. And so what Leaflet does is basically give you access to sets of map tiles, and then there's some hardware underneath, or some software underneath, that allows you to do things like if you click in a spot, it knows what the longitude and latitude is, and if you want to put layers on and so on. So if you're intrigued, I highly encourage you to pop over to their webpage and just do a couple of their tutorials. It's a bit of JavaScript, which when you first look at it will make your eyes pop out, because these are very, very long function invocations that you really kind of have to look and say, like, there was a parenthesis over there. It's a bit like listening to a sentence in German where you get phrase upon phrase upon phrase, and then finally you get to the verb at the end of the sentence. So the JavaScript is a little bit confusing to look at, but it's amazingly powerful and compact. And so with just about a dozen lines of code, you could build a web app that will sit on your phone and allow you to track where you are. It could do things like, you could walk around the U of T campus, and if you just click your map, something will pop up and explain the historical significance of the building in front of you. So if you're interested, whoops. So there are some code pens out there where people have played with Leaflet. Whoops. They're not showing up in this thing, but anyway, let's see if I log in, does that help me? No, it's not going to work there. So this is one of the downsides of switching to Firefox to get this to display. So if you have the slide deck available to you, the pens that are tagged with Leaflet should show up here, and they'll give you examples of how you can build a Leaflet app. Start building it in CodePen. One of the things that you'll see, and we'll see this when we do the New York Times, is anytime you use an API, you often have to tell your program about a library somewhere else that it's going to use. And so you'll often see as the first instructions in one of these things is make sure that you include the script from our that lets you access our API. And so we'll see that in a couple of cases as we go down here. Another example is the SoundCloud API. You can do all kinds of cool audio stuff, accessing stuff that's on SoundCloud. So you could build your own audio player. You could build a social network on top of that, and so on. And here are some code pens that use SoundCloud. The Pokemons, the Poke API is out there. And there are some code pens that play with that. I don't really understand how Pokemons work, so I can't say anything more about that. There's a YouTube API, and here's some code pens that play with that. And then there's the Alexa API, which you heard me playing with while you were watching those videos. The Alexa API is, on the one hand, it's extremely complex in the sense that there's lots of layers of stuff going on. So where does the actual voice recognition happen? Where does the voice synthesis happen? How does the accessing of the web happen within Alexa apps and so on? But Amazon provides an amazing sort of development environment where you can build Alexa apps using the Alexa API in a very straightforward way. And I'm going to see if I can demonstrate that here. So this is a real quick and dirty little thing that we threw together about a year or two ago in a class I was teaching on legal innovation. And I'm going to see if I can make it work. Alexa, ask a state lawyer what I should do with my money.
Great. Let's get started. First, a question about you and your money. How much money do you have? Lots and lots, some, or not very much?
Some.
Would you say that you are generous or that you are a tightwad?
I'm very generous.
What personality are you looking for?
Generous.
Do you prefer to give money to people or to institutions?
People.
How do you feel about your alma mater?
Go Trojans.
What alma mater are you looking for?
USC.
So you have some of money. You are generous, you want to give your money to people, and you love USC. As far as your will is concerned, it is sort of hopeless because I don't know what I am doing.
So anyway, there's Alexa for you. If you notice on the screen, the input and the output are all just big JSON structures. And so if I were going about training, developing what they call an Alexa skill, I have to go through and I have to give it an invocation. And this is what you say to Alexa to wake up a given program. And it's basically a fill in the blank form that translates into a big JSON structure for all of the different ways that I could invoke the skill. And then the dialogue back and forth, the whole voice interface is built up out of sort of a giant array of if-then statements. So what are all the things you could say and mean, go to step one. And so you specify all these things, and they're specified out in the, they get converted into this JSON. This JSON is then sent off to some part of the API, and what it's going to do is generate, it'll generate some connections to the voice recognition. And then when I use it, I talk to Alexa, and the voice recognition layer of Alexa, which I don't have to program, it's already in there. It takes what I say and maps that into text, and then sends that text off to that part of the API that can then look through this JSON and say, can I find some match in there? And if it finds a match, it says, well, what he meant was to do this thing or that thing, and so on. So it's the kind of thing that you can figure out how to do over the course of a solid working day. And of course, one doesn't become an expert in that time. And you're going to be doing a certain amount of where the platform says, just use this, and you don't quite understand how it works in that. But at the end of the day, you could put together an Alexa skill. And some links here for further investigation there. Okay, so the video introducing the New York Times API project was in your inbox there. We'll talk about it a little bit, assuming that you have seen it already. What we want to do is have everybody sign up for an API key with the New York Times, and they'll require your email address or an email address. And then you'll get back a, I can't remember how long they are, 48 character long key. And in the code that I'm looking at here, I'm going to replace where it says your API key. I would put my API key there. What's going to happen then is the code is going to create a long URL that's going to start with the domain name and so the internet address of the New York Times API server. And then it's going to say slash this, slash that. So there's like 3 or 4 things between slashes. And what those are telling the server which part of the API we want to access. And then we're going to have a question mark. And the question mark is going to lead us into the parameters. And parameters are always specified to an API using this format as a key equals value pair. So in this case, API key equals, and then your API key, and then Q equals, and then the thing that we are querying, the tag that we're looking for. So what the code we're looking at here does is the first part says, here's the basic address of the New York Times API for looking for articles. So https://api.newyorktimes.com. That's the server. And then these slashes are the parts that are accessing the article search API that traffics in JSON. And so the SVC, the search, the version 2 article search, all of those things are added on to the domain name. And we're at that point, we're accessing this particular API. Right? Then I'm going to append to that my API key. And then a little further down here, I'm going to build the full query. And so I'm going to have a variable called URL, and I'm going to build that up out of this New York Times API string, and then a question mark, Q equals, and then whatever is the query that I'm looking for. So if I say search for Canada, then it's going to say Q equals Canada. And then another ampersand, the and symbol, and then API-key, that's the name of the key, that's the thing, the variable, equals, and then we put our API key in there. So that line of code just builds that whole URL that we're going to send to the New York Times. And I'm going to stick that into this function, load JSON. And if you remember from the video, this is a p5.js function. So p5.js is sort of a platform that's meant for doing graphics and visualization in web pages using JavaScript. So it's a library where they've taken and made a whole bunch of the complexity of doing graphics and SVG graphics and on a canvas and HTML5. They've made that much easier by kind of packaging it all in some commands that make sense. One of them is this load JSON function that we're using here. So we say load JSON and we give it the URL, and then we name a function that we're going to write. And you can see it right below here, right? It says function called got data, right? And when we name it up here, we don't need any parentheses or anything. We just name it. And what we're doing here is creating what we call an asynchronous function. Okay. Asynchronous in this case means I'm going to ask the API to do something, but I don't want to sit here waiting until it's done. I have to just kind of move on. And so this function, this top part of the program, basically it finishes up. So my display just finishes up after it does this. But what it does is it takes this function got data and kind of sticks it on a stack and says, you just sit there and wait. And when an event happens, namely when the API returns with some data, then you can jump off of that stack, take that data, and start operating on it. And then got data says, great, I call whatever I get, I call it data. And then I'm going to process my way through it. Okay, so some of the stuff in the code here is sort of shorthand that as we go through the tutorial today, we'll kind of see the motivation for it. So right now we'll just kind of talk about the logic of this. So what this says is data is the name of the thing that we got back from the API. One of the components of it is called response, and one of the components of response is called docs. So we can say data.response.docs. The only reason for this line here is just because we don't want to keep typing data.response.docs. So it's sort of just a shorthand. Docs itself is, it turns out, an array of 10 things. So the way this API works is you put in a request, and if it finds anything that matches, it sends it back in a package of 10. So you get 10 in a box, and that box is an array, and the array is called docs. So you have docs of 0 through docs of 9. The rest of the code here just kind of plays with that. And what we'll do in the tutorial is basically build all of this stuff up one step at a time. So we'll do a kind of a stepwise refinement on that. If I type something in right here, right now, okay, it is not going to do anything. It's not going to work. Okay, and the reason it's not going to work is because I don't have an API key here. Now, if I jump to another screen, and I'm going to just jump over here, and I'm going to go grab my API key. So I'm on a different screen, and I'm going to the New York Times API. I'm signing in. I look myself up. And I copy my API key. I come back here. And I put my API key in there. It looks like that. And then I try and see if it works. And so what this thing does now is it goes up, grabs something from New York Times, and sends it back here. Okay. Now we're going to do a little silliness. Let's see. So we're in the window here. So now we don't want to have the quotes in there. Okay, so now what I've done is I've just created that API request URL. So here's the server. Here's the part that specifies the API. And then there's a question mark. And after the question mark come the parameters. One parameter is my API key, and one parameter is Q, looking for the keyword Canada. So I'm going to now pop that in there. So if you take yourself to the development portal and you want to click on the Get Started either down here or up here. And this set of instructions walks you through what you have to do to acquire your own API key. Very quick and straightforward. You create an account, sign into the portal. So if I sign in, so now when I look myself up, I'm going to see that I have one of these selections here is apps. And so I have to create an app that's associated with the work that I'm doing. So once you've created your login, your account, and you're ready to get an API, what you want to do is you want to say create a new app. And so I'm just going to call this test, and then you have to say which APIs you're going to use in this project. The only one we're going to use is the article search. You're free to play with others, of course. And then I'm going to say that I want to create this app. Once I've created the app, they give me a unique ID for the app itself. Right? Then down here, I have the API key. Tells me when I made it, tells it when it expires. I can get rid of it if I think, for example, that my students are downloading zillions of articles from the New York Times using my API key. Then I could come in and revoke it here. Okay. I can just copy it like that. And then if I'm doing the work today, what I would typically do is I would jump back here. I would go right to CodePen. Then I'd say I want to start a new pen. And then come back here, copy that. And then I might just write and I just stick it in there. And that's just a quick way to have it available. So it says it's updated the app. And now I'm going to go back to developers and I'm going to click on APIs because I want to learn about them. And so I click on the article search API and I'm looking at 3 spaces on the interface here. So on the left, I've got some stuff about the API, some things I can jump to for further information. In the middle is the basic documentation. And over here is going to be some space where an actual interaction with the API can be had. But before any of that, I have to do this authorize. And in order to authorize, I'm going to select one of the apps that I've created. And what it's going to do, I'm going to say to authorize it. And then I'm going to say, okay. And so what I've just done is say, I'm interacting with this API right now. And
so Dan, a question regarding the specific ID key here. Are we looking at all APIs when we use that? Would that affect the transactions in a way? I mean, I'm trying to understand the full scope of the unique identified key.
So back on this screen.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as I understand from using this, the API key, you can set it so that it's usable for any or all of these APIs, but it's only going to be usable for the ones that you choose. And so the logic of it seems to be, to me, that when I am working on a particular app, I get a key that I use for that app, and I only enable the APIs that I'm intending to use in that app.
So this doesn't affect the speed of which you receive the JSON back or something like that.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I think that the only things that can affect that are going to be the amount of traffic at the other end, because they're going to regulate the rate at which things are allowed to be sent to you. So they're going to regulate and say you can only make a request every 6 seconds or something like that, and they're only going to send you 10 results at a time. So they kind of regulate the hose in that sense.
Okay, thank you.
So back when I'm on the page looking at the details about the API, what they give you up top here is the stuff that's particular to how you talk to this API. So the first part is just this article search.json. That's the name of the API we're talking to. And then this says there's 2 generic parameters. One is the query, the keyword that you're looking for. And then the other are filters that you might want to add to that. And you could spend a decent amount of time learning about the logic of the filters. If any of you are in the sort of the library and archives end of the operation, this is something that you're a specialist in probably already. There's a slide at the end of the deck that that takes a look at some references on how some of that filtering works. So they give us an example here, right? And we notice it's got the first part again is the server, and then this stuff walks us over to a certain part of the API, and then this gives us the actual thing that we are talking to. And then after that, we have the query, the keyword is election, and then we have API key equals, and then your key would go in here. Filters are described here, and it goes on and on and on about how to do that. There's lots and lots to learn about how to specify your search. The basic idea of this kind of searching is a bit like when you connect to Amazon or Best Buy or something like that, and they have that little thing on the side that says, do you only want to see products between this and this price range? Do you only want to see products that are electronic? Do you only want to see products that are wireless? Do you only want to see products by Sony, and so on? So much of this material there is related to narrowing your search like that. Okay, so I think I already authorized it. Okay. Now I'm going to go over here and take a look at this thing called schemas. And what schemas are descriptions of the structure of the data that we're going to get back. And so this kind of goes through and says, these are all the fields inside of an article object that we're going to get back. And they're kind of endless. Okay. Do I need to study them carefully? Not too carefully. Okay. If I click on this one, I'm going to get an example of the interface. So here it's going to say, here's the request. And then after that is going to be question mark, and then my query parameters. And what they're doing here is saying, these are all the different query parameters you can use. And on the far right, I've got a web form that basically says, you can fill this form in, and what we'll do is we'll construct the URL that we're going to send to the API for you. So in a certain sense, this thing that you have on the right is the thing that we're going to build in the tutorial today. Right? So we're going to build like a mini version of this thing. For now, just to see how it works, I'm going to throw something in here, like say landslide. Not that I'm planning on climbing muddy mountains. I'm just thinking about a country I know. So I click there, and notice it says my credentials are my API key, so it's already built in. So Gary puts a nice thing in the docs there about the API limit. So what is it? 4,000 a day, 10 per minute. So sleep 6 seconds in between. So for our purposes, we're never going to encounter much of a problem with that, because it will take us at least 6 seconds to see what we've gotten back and to make a new request. So if I say execute, then the results come down here. It's just a very big JSON. Now you can tell how big it is because I'm scrolling down like mad and this little thing on the side is barely going down, right? So it just goes on and on and on for a long way. If you want to see it, the best thing to do, as I did in the video, is just copy the darn thing. And I paste it in here. And I want to do is a tree view of it. And so when I do a tree view, it's collapsible. So it says, look, you've just downloaded an object that has 3 components. And those 3 components are status, which is just a single key value pair, status okay. Copyright is just a key value. So the key is copyright, and then the string is here. And then the rest of it is this thing called response. And in this case, response has 2 components. One of those components is docs, which is an array of 10 objects. And then there's this meta. And the meta is just how many hits were there. So I found 19,390 articles had the word landslide in them. The time it took for that information to come back and get processed. And then the offset is, where am I? Where are these 10 responses or these 10 documents in the greater scheme of 19,390? And so this says this is the first 10. So it's the offset is 0. They start at 0. So I've got item 0 through item 9 here. And then we can look in here and say, what do those items look like? So there's 10 things came back, and these are, each of them is a JSON object, and they have different lengths. So some of them are longer, some of them are shorter. This thing has an abstract. It has its URL. This is where the actual article is. A snippet, which is the top of the article, and then the first paragraph. They tell me where in the newspaper it appeared, what page it was on, the source. Now, of course, these are all going to be sourced in the New York Times, but I might need that as a piece of data. And then I've got this multimedia thing, which is an array of 74 pieces, each of which turns out to be an image, or in some cases, a video or an audio file. Okay. Notice that that's not a whole URL. Okay. So in order to make these multimedia things make sense, I have to know what goes in front of that. And there, it turns out there's a standard string on the server that's going to be api.newyorktimes.com/multimedia/archive/something. And then images, blah, 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 gets attacked onto that. This tells me how big this particular picture is, some old information. So the legacy, meaning we have to have this in there because there used to be a way the software treated this thing. So the rest of the multimedias are going to be keys to other versions of the images or other images that are in the article. Below that, I've got the headline. And the headline is, again, a structure. We can tell with the curly brackets. And it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 parts, which is what it tells us in brackets there. And then here's the print headline, and here's the main headline. Okay. So we notice that those in this case, they look like they're the same except for the word central. If I wanted to access that headline, it's going to be this whole object dot response dot docs. So dot response dot docs of 0, because it's the first one. So docs square bracket 0 square bracket dot headline dot main. And that is going to get me to that little bit of data right there. Notice we also have the byline in here, right? We have lots of information about the author. Some information about the article in terms of word count, what section it appeared in, and so on and so forth. So the task that we're going to have today is to write some code that can receive, think of it like a catching a ball, that we can catch the data object that's sent to us. We're going to hand it to this function called getData, which is a callback function. Callback function meaning it sits there and waits until you call back. The name comes from that wonderful service that some call centers, service centers have now, where you call, and instead of putting you in a queue, what they do is they say, give us a number and we'll call you back when somebody's free, right? If you interrupt a friend, right? Hey, how are you? Can I call you back in a bit? I'm on the phone right now. So callback is that same kind of logic where you can just sit tight, and when the service at the other end is ready, it will send you the data, and then you can jump into action and do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this data and receive it in this function getData, and then start playing with it. And you can imagine that the main thing we're going to do is iterate over this docs array. Right, so we're going to basically say, for I equals 0 to 9, read through, take a look at doc of I, and do something to it. So we might grab the headline, we might grab the snippet, might grab a photograph, might format it in a fancy way, and so on. So any questions about the JSON that we're looking at here? Now notice that they have different lengths, right? So this one's only got 18. And if I scroll through it and I say, where does it end up here? So it's got abstract, web, snippet, lead paragraph, source, multimedia, headline, keywords, pub, doc, news, section, byline, type of material, ID. So this type of material is a video, right? So the thing itself is a video. If I look at the one that's got 20, right, type of material is news, right? So there's basically some properties of the object which are going to show up in this case that aren't in number 8. If you're curious about how you write code to deal with that, there's a thing in JavaScript where if you have an object, like we have this object here, docs of 0, and that's an object that has these 20 components inside. And those components are named abstract, web URL, and so on. So you can actually ask the object whether it has a property with a given name. And the syntax we use for that is has own property. And so I would ask it, do you have the property print page? And it would say, yes, I do. And then to say, great, so tell me what the value is. And that way you prevent your program from asking for something that's not there. So basically we're using a JSON viewer to easily see what parts would be relevant for us to integrate into whatever app we want. Correct. Right, we're using the JSON viewer to get familiar with the structure. Now I could have, if I were a little snazzier, if I were a little smarter than of a person, I could have used these schemas back here, right? So I could have looked at the article schema and gone through it and learned about the structure that way. And this schema itself is probably behind the scenes written in XML. And so I might very well have a piece of code that can take an XML schema and produce something which will read a JSON that's based on that schema.
Dan, so I know that
everybody wants, newspapers want us to subscribe. How does that work for the API?
I was going to ask that.
So you'll see one answer to that question in playing with this. If you click on, I think I could probably do that here. Let's see. So if I click on that, so I've just clicked on the URL and it's asking me if I would like to subscribe now. If I do this a few more times, it's going to actually block me from viewing this article, and this stuff on the bottom will get more aggressive. So each newspaper is going to have its own way of doing that. If you have friends who send you copies of articles from the New York Times on Facebook, or excuse me, from the Washington Post is particularly aggressive in this regard, and you get like maybe one free article per month, and then after that they just don't show it to you and ask if you want to subscribe.
Yeah, but for an API that they're offering.
Okay, so our task today, and Hussein's going to go over this in the tutorial, kind of we'll recover some of the same path again. Let's see if I can make my way back here. Oh, just before we go, if I wanted to say, I only want to look for articles about landslide recently, right? So what I might do is I might put the date in here for the begin date. And notice over here, they're using regex as a way of describing what is a valid format for the date, right? So they're saying it has to start at the beginning of the line, so there can't be anything in front of it, and there can't be anything after it. And then remember, /D stands for any digit. So, and this says 8 of them. So a date is 8 digits. So if I said, I want articles about landslides that were this year and in the last, say, 2 weeks. So from 10/15 on. And then I go down here to my query and say landslide. And so that's going to give me just articles from the last 2 weeks or so. So one of the things you might want to do when you're building your own application, you might want to give the user an opportunity to put in a begin date, or you might want to sort the outcomes by year. Maybe you don't want to show any outputs. You just want to do a number of repeated searches and just give us some data about it. So if you remember, my argument for why you would want to learn about APIs, one of them was because you might want to build an app, but another one is you might be a data scientist and you might want to use access APIs as a way of building up data sets. And so that would be an example of that. Great question. So yeah, we're, and thank you. I should have mentioned this earlier. I'm going to jump away from the slide so that you can see my beautiful face here. So we decided to try something a little different since we made it to reading week, right? We that's an achievement this year for everybody. Wanted to kind of make this week's work, problem set, and tutorial and class a little more integrated and easy. And so what we've done is we've created the problem set as a single discussion item, I guess they're called, and that it asks you to do the following. At the end of the tutorial, we ask you for each person to fork the code pen. So what forking means is you're going to be looking at the code pen in my code pen account or Hussein's, and you click on fork. And what this does is it copies the entire code pen into your code pen as long as you're logged in. So you have to log into your code pen account to pull this off. You now have an identical copy of the code that was in the code pen. And the final question in the tutorial is the same as the problem set question for this week. And that is, take this basic New York Times API thing that we develop over the course of the tutorial and add something to it. Now, that adding something to it could be as simple or as fancy as you like. It could be simply a matter of changing the style that the text appears, so that instead of the styles that are used in the example, you have ink that's in different colors, or headlines that blink, or what have you. It could be sophisticated things like playing around with the images and searching through all the multimedia to see if there's any videos. It could be pulling more information about the author of the article and adding a byline. It could be formatting it all so it looks more like a real newspaper. If you remember the tutorial that Tanya's article introduces to, where she had the output of an API showing up as cards in a grid, right? So you might say, I'm gonna take that idea and add that on to the New York Times thing. So basically it's just that, just add one thing. In order to make it a little bit richer of a learning experience, what we're asking everybody to do is we've put everybody into a group of 4 people. And so we ask everybody to approach the problem like this. Start out by spending 30 minutes, maybe an hour, heads down, just playing with, trying to come up with a revision of the code as you would like to do it, right? So you don't have to finish it, but you might just sort of say, okay, my 0th draft of this, I'm just going to make the HTML. It's going to say, this is work by Dan Ryan, if it was mine, right? Or John Jones. And what I'm going to do here is make all the text purple. So I take my code pen in which I do make that little change, and I get the embed, and I embed it in a reply in the discussion. So that means that your group's discussion should have 4 code pens in it. And then my challenge to you is, instead of a full-blown problem set over the next 2 weeks, you simply take responsibility to make sure that everybody in your group manages to do this assignment. So have a look at one another's code pens and help each other out, right? So collaborate like mad on this, so that at the end of the period, each of these discussion groups will have 4 enhancements of the API program. And again, they can be, there's no rule about how sophisticated or fancy or complex or anything like that. simply a matter of we help each other get our code working. So that's the problem set next week will just be that tutorial and problem set, basically the same thing. And we'll do full credit if your whole group has stuff that works. And you can just kind of push. And I think that the due date is set as November 8th. Maybe it's November 9th. I think it's set for Monday night, not Sunday night. Are we there now? So you can see the discussion now?
Yes.
Yeah, so I started here. I clicked on problem set. And if you do this, you should land, depending on what group you're in, at a page like this. So a Quercus group page like this, the pages in here are pages that the group can create, right? So I mean, the purpose of this was so that you could create like a wiki-like thing within a group as a work tool. So if I'm in here, I can create a new page called resources.
Sorry, Dan, can I ask a question?
Yep.
Okay, so do we have a problem set this week, or is it going to be?
This is it. This is the problem set.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. So the idea was, we're going into reading week. Let's do something light and straightforward, and that's not onerous. That's the goal. The discussions. These are the private discussions inside of the group. You can put files up there, and collaborations is kind of a meaningless tool that Quercus has in it. Anyway, so if I go back again to, so group assignment, there's 4 people, should be 4 people in every group. If there's only 3, that's fine. If you have somebody who's missing in action, right, who just doesn't appear to be with us anymore, don't worry about that. We'll take that into account. So don't feel like you have to waste a million hours tracking anybody down. So what everybody wants to do is you want to fork the exemplar. It's down here if you want to use this one here, right? So how would I fork this? Right, I would go to it on CodePen, and remember I'm in the authors one right here right now. But if I weren't, I would log in, make sure I'm logged into CodePen, and then I would just click fork. And then a very smart thing to do when you fork is to just start out and give it a name that's different. So I might sort of just say, this is problem set 8, Dan's fork, right? And that's just because they look the same, and just I like to do that so I know where the hell I am. And then I'm going to change this little bit of the HTML. This is what I meant. Just at least do this, right? This app is by Dan. Here's what it does. All the text is green with a yellow. Now, I hope nobody gets inspired to be that boring, but there it is. So I just say that's what I'm planning to do. And then I'm going to click on embed. And I probably want to make the code editable. Might drag this to change the size of the window. And then I'm going to say I want an iframe down here. I copy that. Go back here. If I were in my discussion area, I would click on reply. And then I'm now in the rich text editor, right? So I've got all this formatting stuff. So I go to the HTML editor and I can just pop that right in there. If I want to get snazzy, I might surround it with paragraph tags. The benefit of doing that is if I wanted to type above it or below it when I go back here, it's a little easier to do it that way because I can just sneak in here and type something. Anyway, so now I've just put this in here, and now my teammates would see, aha, Dan has suggested that what he would like to do is turn this app into something that's going to make the text all green, and so on, and he would put his API key in here to make this thing work. And of course, I would do that first because that's the very first thing I want to verify, right? I want to make sure that that's happening. And so, can I go back to my New York Times thing? It's not here, or maybe here. No. I would paste my thing in there and verify that it works, and then maybe I go into the CSS and I say, oh, I'm going to change it to dark green. And the background will be yellow. And then, yeah, I'm going to go get that API key just so we can really do it. So I've just copied my API key over there and go into the JavaScript and I put it in here. And just see if it works. And there we go. I've got some Fluke articles. And look, they're green and yellow now. So again, that's a pretty boring and unchallenging thing to do, but we're requiring nothing more. Questions? So Ruck team, did your question?
Hello, yeah, that I could see the two groups. So is it the tutorial 112? I'm looking at the page. The entire page is empty for me, actually. If I click on the links, except for the people, I can't see anything else.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the beginning and tell me where we're in the process. So I'm
Sure.
here and I go to the problem set. So when you look at this page, you see nothing, or?
Let me check. I didn't go from that link, actually. Let me check just in a bit.
Now it's published. Thank you.
APIs problem set.
This little stuff like that drive you up the wall.
Oh, okay. Now I can see.
Well, as your classmate has pointed out, that's my fault, not your fault that you didn't. Again, technically you can move yourself around, but it will mess matters up in the Supreme if you do, so try not to. Okay, back to the discussion itself. I will pin that up there. So it's currently due November 9th at 11:59. So I'm perfectly happy to have it due at the end of reading week, but I assume that it's better not to drag things out.
So then,
Yeah.
so it's just like the one we did before, right? In one of the problem sets, I think we did similar exercise. Where we had to
Similar. This one's a lower threshold of cooperation. So
Okay.
you don't need to actually coordinate anything with anybody. We're just asking that you be looking at each other's code and offering suggestions, explaining how things work, what have you. if my code doesn't work,
Mhm.
I might want to post an announcement in my group saying, help, what is wrong? I thought I did exactly what I was supposed to do and it's just not working. And other people in my group might take a look and see what happened.
Okay, thank you. So it's just posting the reply and nothing, no, we don't have to submit anything, right? Apart from
No, so
posting
the
that.
submission will just be, what we'll do is we'll just look over all the groups, and as long as the group has everybody with a thing in there, then we treat the whole group gets the full credit for that.
Thank you.
So these questions about the people and the groups, T1 group, what W8 APIs? Oh, I think I understand now. So so the T1 and T2, T1 just means tutorial section 1, and T2 means tutorial section 2. The way that Quirkus has everybody registered for the course, you may remember you had to sign up for the class and a tutorial section. So the way that Acorn and Rosie and all those things work together is I'm actually looking at 3 different, there's like 3 different Quirkus courses going on here. One is the course, and then one for each of the tutorials. Now we're not using the tutorials, but we tried to put people in groups with people that they are likely, that they were at least scheduled to be in the tutorial session with. So that's the logic of that. So T2 just means this is a group of people taken from what Quirkus calls tutorial 2. I'm not sure if that's Tuesday or Wednesday, but initially everyone got an invite to W8 APIs. Invitation to a group called that. Let me see if I can figure out what that was about. W8 APIs. So when you say 2 groups are shown, like where are they shown? Where are you seeing those? I'm not seeing them. Under groups. Am I looking at the same page you're looking at? Groups tab in the left pane.
Dan, it's the one where you have like calendar, dashboard, and all of that stuff. That blue pane under the Quirkus logo and your profile picture and everything.
There's a group. Which
We
one of
have
these
like
is
a
group?
I'm not sure. We have like a group section there, and then if you click on it, it shows.
Oh, you see something I don't see. Okay, okay. I'm going to go into student view, see if I see it here. I guess that student is not in any groups, but you see it over here somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I also got like an email that said right before I got an invitation for T1 and all that, it said W8, but it's empty. There's nothing in it. So maybe it was just made on accident. I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't recall doing that. I mean, I always assume that nothing ever happens until I publish, and so I figure I'm safe, but maybe I wasn't. Okay. My apologies for confusion. We'll pick this up at 4 in the tutorial today. It's just going to be constraint continuity. If you take a look at what the tutorial looks like. we're reviewing the same material going into building this thing up from scratch. We start out with JavaScript that's basically empty. We take a look at what the results that we get back are. And then we gradually build this up. Now, I mentioned this in the video, but just a note ahead of time. Because we're using P5, this setup function will show up, and it doesn't do anything other than kind of get the ball rolling. So what is the 15 points? That's got to be a legacy of something. Oh, I think that was something I copied in from another course, and somebody completed it or looked at it, and so I couldn't delete it. Let me check. Nope, that's not published. Yeah, this is the one. So that's gone. So somebody must have uncompleted it, because we weren't allowed to delete that yesterday. So ignore it. Matter of fact, it should be gone. If it's not gone, here, I'll make it go. Disappear. So this is a 10-pointer. Sorry for staring so close to the camera there. It must be a bit freaky. I believe it's the same. I think the thing at the end of the tutorial is the same as the one that's in the quiz, one that's in the discussion. The advantage of the one that's in the discussion is I made sure it was cleaned up and simple, and that there was no debris in it. But it won't be functionally any different. And again, just to remind, this is meant to be high collaboration, which doesn't mean cutting and pasting somebody else's code. It means learning from each other, of course. But we're meant to be teaching one another here. Okay, I'm going to stop recording, sign off, and come back at 4 to say hello for tutorial, unless there's any other questions before we run.